Welcome to the Strategy and Leadership Podcast, the podcast that brings you practical advice, lessons, and stories from senior leaders and thought leaders from around the world. The Strategy and Leadership Podcast is brought to you by SME Strategy, working with organizations around the world to create and implement their strategic plans. To learn more, visit SMEstrategy.net. And now, your host, Anthony Taylor.
Hey there, folks. Welcome to today's episode of the Strategy and Leadership Podcast. My guest today is Rob Ferguson, who is the founder and CEO of the Ferguson Alliance. He is a former CEO of industry and now moved to the consultative side to support organizations moving forward. Rob, how are you today?
I'm doing terrific, Anthony. Thanks for having me on your podcast.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And, as our listeners might know, and as I told you, typically we don't have, consultants on here, but you're not a traditional consultant. You have a deep specialized expertise in helping people. But why don't you tell our listeners about who you are, what you do, and I'll ask you some more questions.
Yeah, sure. Happy to do that. Yeah, that's true. As you said in your opening, I'm a business leader, was 30 years of a public company as well as a non-public company. And then I transitioned from a business leader to now a business advisor, really helping other business leaders with their challenges and opportunities that they have running family businesses. I can talk a little bit more about that specifically. My background, I grew up in a traditional, after college, in a large Fortune 100 company, went through their management training program and was very fortunate. At a very young age, had a great career and great training, and was part of a leverage management buyout group, youngest guy, and spun that little company out. And we grew it and took it public. I became CEO of that, and then we monetized on that. And so that was really terrific. Went from 30 million to 400 million in annual revenue. And then went into a family business. It was a 100-year-old family business, very interesting industrial packaging company. Fifth generation was running it at that time. I don't know, maybe 17 cousins were involved. It was a hot mess, so to speak. And my job was to go in there and fix the business, turn it around, and then sell it for the family, which we did do. I got that accomplished. And from there, I started sitting on various boards for family-owned businesses. They would hire guys like me to go sit on operating company boards and report back into the family office how they were performing. And that's where I really fell in love with family businesses. I thought I'd be an institutional guy my whole career, and I realized what family businesses mean to the global economy. Here in the United States, they're very significant. They drove 72% of employment 2 years ago, so it's a big number. They drive philanthropy, they drive innovation. So, and then the other thing I've learned is that family businesses, are a lot more resilient than non-family businesses. In fact, this is what got me into this advisory. Is I wanted to do something to really help what I think is a significant problem in business today, and that's the lifespan of family businesses declining rapidly. In the 1950s, the average lifespan of a business was 60 years. Okay. Now, back in the 1950s, when they were taking statistics and demographics of businesses, they didn't separate between family and non-family business, just all. So that's 60 years for all business. But today, I can tell you in 2022, the average lifespan of a family-owned business was 24 years. So it's gone from 60 to 24 years. That, to me, that's an alarming trend. And just for your benchmarking information, S&P 500 companies, their average lifespan is 15 years. Okay. So that's what we believe is the real problem. So that's why we exist in trying to help give practical strategies to help reverse that lifespan trend.
So, because you have the deep experience with it, both leading it and then supporting folks. And then I'll say, you know, not the caveat, but the context that our listeners either might be leading family businesses or they might be in family businesses. And as an advisor myself, you know, I hear from a lot of people that are in family businesses saying, okay, I've got this family business where it's, you know, the brother or the dad, the son, and all those go. So can you maybe tell us, what are some of the nuances or challenges that you see with some family businesses? And then, you know, the next kind of set of questions will be like, hey, what are some of the kind of best practices to support those businesses and supporting their longevity? But what are some of the nuances and some of the key characteristics or challenges that you see in family businesses?
Well, as you know, Anthony, because you work with businesses every day as well, business is challenging, whether you're family or non-family, right? So the nuance in a family business is you have all of the challenges of a business, but then you have the family. Okay. And so you have all of the historical relationships of family that are present in your business challenges. So you might be the CEO of the business, but your aunt is a CFO. Okay. So that's that dynamic. So that's what we find is that we have to be able to get family businesses to understand what the greater good is of the business. And we do that by asking a simple question that's very difficult to answer completely and thoroughly. And that question is, are you a family first business or are you a business first family? So a lot of times we'll get a quick reaction, and it's more values based. You know, it might be, oh well, no, we're God family business, right? Something like that, more valued centered. And we'll say, no. What is the most senior priority? And how are you going to operate and manage and make decisions around that declaration? So once we get the family to answer that question, are you a family first business or a business first family? We get them to understand the differences between those two and then make a choice, then we can go forward. There's not a good or bad answer, not a right or wrong. It's just declaring what it is.
Do you mind sharing the distinction between the two?
Sure. So a family first business is going to be present in a lot of smaller businesses that you come across every day. It might be your dry cleaners. It might be your local restaurant. And if you think about it, it can be larger businesses as well. But when you look into the business, it's a lot of the family members are employed in the business. And maybe those family members are not the most qualified, but it's a way for them to get compensated. So the family first business is there for the benefit of the family, however that's defined. In a business first family business, it's there for the benefit of the business. The business comes first. The business priorities come first.
Okay, got it. And then I don't know if you have a preference of working between one or the other, because I feel like it's the motivators and drivers. To me, when you were explaining the family first business, it occurs more as like a lifestyle, whereas the business first family business really is around supporting growth, potentially supporting impact, profits. Is that a fair assertion?
Yeah, absolutely. You hit the nail right on the head squarely. Our mission is to help these family businesses live longer. And we know that business first families, those businesses can, and will live longer because of the reasons you just listed. Whereas a lifestyle business or a family first business, it's going to hit their ceiling. It will not, it's only going to live as long as that family is there. And typically what we see happening is the family gets so big that the business can't keep up feeding the bigger family as multiple generations come in. It can be done, but it's very, very challenging. So our preference is working with business first families, because that really lines nicely with what our mission is to help family businesses live longer.
So let's consider, like, let's just kind of follow along the business first families. You talked about the longevity in there, and then you talked about the fact that your family doesn't go away in the 9 to 5, and unfortunately, you have to make decisions, and sometimes tough decisions throughout that. So maybe 1 or 2 or 3 kind of best practices for leaders in these family businesses and the business first families to be successful in navigating the challenges of working with family. I'll take 2 or 3.
Yeah. Okay. Well, the first big one, I believe, is making that choice, making that decision, what we just said, and everybody has to consensually agree to that. Okay. It's got to be 100% agreement. Then secondly, establishing, I'm just going to call it a family constitution. Okay. So it's
A family constitution distinct from a business constitution.
A family business, a business family constitution. Thank you.
Got it. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's, how is the family going to work and operate inside the business? And it's in addition to the normal corporate documents you'd see, like bylaws or management agreements. And in that family business constitution, that's where you make a lot of decisions around how are we going to hire family members? How do we think about non-blood family members in the business? So you basically design that. We try to get that family business constitution designed for 2 or 3 generations forward. So it'll live on. So you don't really work it for the current sitting generation. You work it 2 or 3 generations downstream, and that seems to help get alignment, and it helps separate out the family and the business. And so that would be the second thing that we would highly recommend. And then the third is kind of in your area, is getting clarity and full agreement on what's the purpose of this business, where are we going to take it long term, how are we going to get there? Then that gets into the whole strategy development of the business. And so to me, those are the kind of 3 big initiatives to have a family business become very successful and live from one generation to the next.
Yeah, and what I hear from that, and I think it's all 3 of those, is about just making really important and impactful decisions considering the future. And they're not things that happen kind of fly by night. Like, you really have to sit and intentionally have the conversation. Who are we? What are our kind of rules or regulations for managing this as an entity so that it can be prosperous and successful now and in the future? And then lastly, like, what is that future look like for us? And then you have the intricacies of family and individual growth within a business, which impact that. So let me ask a slightly kind of different question. So we talked about longevity. You talked about, moving the business forward. What do you recommend to families that are considering succession planning? And the irony, or not an irony, I was talking to somebody just for a previous interview, and she was saying, hey, our company has a no nepotism rule, so I can't hire my son. But in a lot of cases, there are those 2nd or 3rd generations, much, much fewer, I would say, in 2024. But what would you say to a CEO who was thinking about bringing their son or daughter or cousin or aunt into the business as a means of succession planning? Do you have a couple recommendations for them to consider?
Yeah. Number 1, start early. Start your succession plan as early as possible. Number 2, start earlier than what you thought you should be starting. And number 3, start early. I mean, it's kind of tongue in cheek, but the sooner you can start on succession planning, the better. And you want the succession plan to be somewhat dynamic. Okay. When we do succession planning, we try to have at least 2 or 3 plans that are going at one time, because, and this, you're in strategy, the external environment's very dynamic, right? Things change in business. And so you yeah, you have a course or direction that you're headed down, but you have to have some flexibility to deal with the upsets or the opportunities that come along as you're moving forward. So same thing in succession planning. So maybe you have a family member that's part of the succession plan. Maybe you have a non-family member executive that's part of it. And then maybe part of your succession plan is really liquidating and exiting by selling to a third party. So I would just say start early. It's an iterative process. It's not something that you just pins down after 3 months and you put the plan, on your bookshelf. It's you work it, you work it, you work it.
Okay. And so let's say there's a family business owned by a family, and then you're talking to call it a senior leader who is forced to, gets the opportunity to work within the joys and constraints of a family business. So I guess there's kind of two sides to this. What would you say to a CEO who is supporting a leader that has to manage that? But then how do you talk to, and I don't know if you do any work with folks that are senior leaders in a family business, because it's not always easy to make decisions when, there's three of the same last name on the executive team and you have to manage within that. Is there any best practices you'd say to support not continuity, but effective conflict communication?
Sure.
Business
Yeah.
growth?
So the first thing I would just say is making sure that roles and responsibilities are really clear and homes for decision making are understood. What's our default decision making process around here? Are we autocratic? Are we going to be consensual? Are we going to be democratic? Are we going to be collaborative? What is that? Getting that well defined, and then okay, who owns this decision around profitability or operations or marketing, whatever it is? Getting that really established. There's, we work with our clients, and I did this when I was a CEO. I had 3,500 employees, and we ended up just doing a simple RACI matrix, responsibilities, accountabilities, who you're going to collaborate, who you're going to inform. That tool was very effective for me when I was a CEO. And then I made sure that RACI matrix aligned to our organization structure. And that organization structure aligned to our value chain. So the point being is those best practices in business today really apply well here in a family business, and they're very necessary to have. The second thing I would do, just like you do in business, is get the compensation aligned well. You want to align the compensation to those senior executives. That if you're delegating strategic decisions, you're delegating big financial decisions to non-family members. There, maybe it's a president, not a CEO. You want to make sure that the compensation is aligned to creating shareholder value, and that they get rewarded on that. And then the one thing I would say to the senior executives is recognize, I'm going to come back to the statistic I said earlier, is the lifespan of a family business is much longer than S&P 500. Family businesses make decisions slower, but they're better. Family businesses, their horizon is 2 decades because it's to the next generation. Whereas an S&P 500, a non-family business, it's the next quarter. Okay, we got a quarterly earnings report, so let's make decisions to make that. Now I'm speaking in generalities. So and then the culture in a family business is a lot more sustainable for non-family member employees and executives than I would say in a non-family business. And I've been in both. I've experienced both.
And I find that interesting. Yeah, the drivers, decision-making time, and recognizing, hey, if you work in a family business, it's, I don't want to say more relaxed, that's probably not the word, but the pressure external is a lot less when you have to report to a board or your quarterly earnings or what have you. And then, go back to the RACI. There's a lot of great, what I heard was, putting those fundamental business best practices in. We have a lot of them through our strategy implementation programs. I'm sure you do as well, but the fundamental for a reason. And if you think about fundamental, it is the foundation. When you have all of that stuff in place, it creates transparency, it creates certainty, it creates knowns, and it just makes the work easier for everybody, especially when there's a higher possibility for emotion to get into decision making and to have other storylines in the organization playing a part. So
that's so right, because leaders, the whole job of a leader is just keeping the organization aligned to where we're going, right? Mm-hmm. And we use a term internally with our clients called leadershiping. We turned the noun into a verb. I know it's not proper grammar, but we call it leadershiping, which is really bringing the future to the present. And that's what the role of a leader is in a family business, as well as a non-family, is you've got to be able to keep everybody in between the gutters, so to speak, on the bowling lane, make sure everybody understands where north is, but give them the flexibility to move in between the gutters, but they're still making progress. And that leadership role is so critically important.
Yeah, absolutely. Rob, where can people get a hold of you? And before I let you answer that, I just want to highlight that there's an amazing download on your website. So he didn't ask me to say this, but I'm saying it, is the prosperity plan, about 3/4 down the main page. It's a 30-page white paper on supporting family businesses and building freedom, building legacy. It's high quality. So I really want to highlight that. But where can people connect with you? Where can they learn more? Where can they get this white paper as we finish up today?
Yeah, thank you very much, Anthony. You can go to our website at www.ferguson-alliance.com. So don't forget the little dash, ferguson-alliance.com. And you go right there. You'll see a lot of information on our front page. We actually have a section in there called resources. We have a whole resource of podcasts, webinars, blogs, and you can, they're sorted by topics, and you can also search by topic, keyword in there. And you can also schedule a call with myself or our other advisors. We have our links in there, and be happy to talk to anybody. You can email me at rob@ferguson-alliance.com. That's another way to get in touch with us.
Awesome. Rob, thanks for the time today. It's been a pleasure. Really appreciate you sharing your perspectives. I know that there's a lot more we could talk about, but I appreciate you just sharing a couple of quick tips for our listeners today.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Thank you, Anthony.
It's my pleasure. Folks, my guest today, Rob Ferguson, CEO of the Ferguson Alliance. I'm a consultant. I run a business doing strategic planning with my team. And one of the things that we always focus on is about fit. And so, whether you're in the Texas area, whether you're, a family business, I think it's just so important to find a person who understands what you're working on and working with, and that has deep subject matter expertise in it. And so what I really like about Rob, and why I said, hey, can you come on the podcast, was not only is he advising on it, has been for, I think, 14 plus years, but it was a CEO of a very successful family business, and there's intricacies to it. And by having somebody who understands it is key. And then, so that's for you, the listener. And then for anybody is, put those systems in place, whether you're a family business, whether you're a non-family business, putting that clarity, putting those systems, putting that structure will help everybody in your team be more successful. And when you're running a family business, there's that dynamism and there's the conversations that happen outside of the business that can inform that. And by putting more structure in place, if you're going to be a business first, family business, it just helps you focus business first, family next. So it's all about helping you, your family, and the people on your team to be more successful. So Rob, thank you again for sharing today with our listeners about how to do that. Again, appreciate your generosity with your resources. Folks, this has been the Strategy and Leadership Podcast. If you know somebody who is in a business that is run by a family or is running a family business, please share them this episode. Just help them out and help them, add to that 20, 25-year legacy that they're building. And for you, I appreciate you watching, appreciate you subscribing, appreciate you being here. See you next time.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Strategy and Leadership Podcast. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please consider giving us a review. We appreciate you listening and following along, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. And as Anthony says, until next time.